August 12th. This is sensational, friends. The Kremlin has confirmed Donald Trump will fly to Russia after talks with Putin in Alaska on August 15th.
There was a proposal from the Americans, which seems quite acceptable to us.
You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia.
This will already be a Russia-U.S. summit in Moscow.
And who was the initiator of this summit?
Well, there was interest shown by both sides. Who said the first word there? That wasn't me.
Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, has already confirmed the visit to Russia.
Is that option also possible? It's possible too, of course. Indeed, the team will be preparing seriously and working through any agreements. Or maybe the leaders will agree to just talk everything over themselves, so to speak, and then give instructions to their subordinates.
But most interestingly, the visit to Russia by Trump on August 15th, this Friday, was also confirmed by the leader of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov.
It would be better if he came to Russia, yes, and held negotiations if we're discussing a matter of state between Russia and Ukraine.
That's why insiders in the White House claim Trump did not misspeak. This Friday, after Alaska, he will fly to Russia.
You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia.
Breaking news, friends, and this is sensational. Donald Trump made a statement at a press conference that could turn the entire political agenda upside down. He is flying to the Kremlin and plans to meet there with Vladimir Putin, terrorist number one and the Russian dictator.
I'm going in to speak to Vladimir Putin, and I'm going to be telling him, you've got to end this war. You've got to end it.
No, this is not a joke and not a slip of the tongue. Some might call it a slip, but that's not the case. Insiders confirm Putin's aide Ushakov and Trump's team are already preparing the visit to Moscow. According to the plan, this meeting will take place immediately after the talks in Alaska. And the most sensational part, friends, is that Zelensky will not be there. Zelensky will not be in Alaska. Donald Trump officially stated this.
You've got to end this war. You've got to end it. And he wasn't going to mess with me. This war would have never happened. You know, we had a discussion about it one time, and we never had that discussion again. It would have never happened.
Trump stated that he would later bring Putin and Zelensky to the same table to make peace.
Yes, he wants it done quickly.
He must always remember that he can be sent to.
And that's exactly what Putin does. He sends him.
Well,
The most interesting thing is that Keith Kellogg's aides flew to Kiev urgently and unannounced, but they were immediately recalled. Why? Right now, we will discuss all the details and insider information about the upcoming meeting in the Kremlin, the negotiations and possible agreements with a person who attended Trump's press conference, who communicated with the administration, and who knows all the most important things. He is a well-known Republican Trump supporter, a friend of Ukraine, Boris Pinkus. He has just returned from Trump's press conference and is ready to share all the insider information with us. Sensational news. Just now, hot off the press from Trump's press conference, he announced that he is planning to fly to Russia, to Moscow, to the Kremlin. The meeting with Putin will be a trial one. I will tell him to end the war, hoping for a constructive dialogue within 2 minutes. I will decide what happens next. There will either be a deal or there won't. I am going to tell Putin to stop this war. On Friday, I am going to Russia. I am going to meet with Putin. So in other words, Alaska is already in question as Russian territory. And Zelensky won't be at the meeting either. I'll talk to him later and arrange a one-on-one meeting. The most important thing is that they have to meet. I'll sit both of them down, Zelensky and Putin, in the same room and wait until they resolve the issue. We discuss exclusive insider information about what's happening behind the scenes between the Trump and Putin teams with a well-known Republican Trump supporter and great friend of Ukraine. Boris Yakovlevich Pinkus, welcome.
Good afternoon, dear friends. I wanted to share the latest news that everyone is concerned about. And all this news is about one thing. Will there be a meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska, or to be more precise, in the state of Alaska? That's the first question. And the second, will Zelensky participate there? That's the second question. And today, Trump answered this at a press conference in Washington, a press conference that was dedicated to the crime situation in the capital of our country. Indeed, it is off the charts right now, and Trump is taking radical measures to curb crime. But the most interesting thing is that at the press conference dedicated to law and order in the capital of our country, most of the questions were actually about the meeting between Trump and Putin. Only about that. Eventually, even Trump started to get annoyed by this, but nevertheless, he tried to answer many of the questions. And let me talk about the main thing that concerns all of us. First, Trump answered the question of whether Zelensky would participate or not. He replied, Zelensky will not be at this meeting. But he also said that he, Trump, is ready to organize a meeting, either a trilateral one, meaning with Trump, Putin, and Zelensky, or just a bilateral one between Zelensky and Putin. Definitely. That's what he said after this meeting. Now, as for the substantial and significant substance of his highly controversial meeting, to many probing questions posed with considerable reproach regarding his highly publicized meeting with a notorious criminal who unequivocally belongs in the defendant's seat, a truly unprecedented meeting with a man who is now widely considered absolutely untouchable in the civilized world, people persistently asked why former President Trump would ever engage with him in such a manner, thereby undeniably legitimizing him and even meeting him on sacred American soil. All of this, of course, is profoundly and offensively unacceptable. And I'll tell you this straight. How exactly did this sound to the journalists pressing questions? In what way? Why? The main thing out of all the nonsense that Trump usually spouts, reminiscing about how things were under him, blaming all the previous presidents, we're tired of it. It's become grating. You see, from these words, but nevertheless, to hell with it. Let him just get to the point and talk about the real issues faster. So out of everything he said today, we took away the main point. He repeated it. He said that within the first 2 minutes, he would determine whether Putin would end the war in Ukraine or not. And within 2 minutes, Trump says, if I don't feel it, I'll get up and leave. Those were his words. So, of course, I would have a lot of questions for him about this. Why weren't 6 months enough for you to figure this out? And why is it that when you urge him to stop the war, he only intensifies his attacks on Ukraine, destroying residential buildings with elderly people, seniors, children, women, hospitals, and schools? Is that not quite enough for you? And you even sent your trusted messenger, this Mr. Vykov, 5 more separate times, who most probably was the very one who truly convinced you to meet with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. And we have plenty of other significant and important questions for him, for former President Trump. But let's put it this way. For now, we don't have another Trump. Yes, we are indeed very worried. No normal, rational person can truly wrap their head around this. What Donald Trump says and what he actually plans to do is deeply concerning. And yet, let's still place our hopes on the pressure that's being put on him. We talked about this in previous broadcasts, and today I'll repeat it once more. The pressure is enormous, both from the American public and the American voter. I repeat, this is very important. From the bipartisan Congress, that's the second source. And the European Union, Europe, this is also very important. Trump cannot ignore all of this. So let things go as Trump is planning. Supposedly, within 2 minutes, he'll figure things out, turn around and leave. Or if Putin accepts Trump's terms, then they will continue the dialogue and further develop their relationship. That's what we are assuming with you. Let's wait and see. But I have one more significant thought that I truly want to share with you in considerable detail. If there isn't such an incredibly strict and rigid perception of Donald Trump, specifically in terms of Vladimir Putin's potential reaction to a genuinely fair and equitable establishment of peace or a comprehensive truce in Ukraine, if the anticipated reaction from Putin that Trump so earnestly desires and expects ultimately doesn't come to fruition or simply fails to materialize as hoped for, then what happens next? After all, today, the Russian President Vladimir Putin is undoubtedly listening very closely to every single word that Donald Trump said at the recent press conference, and is certainly drawing his own significant conclusions from those statements. I wouldn't rule out that after analyzing, listening to, and replaying everything Trump said today, Putin might come to the conclusion, is it even worth going at all? And won't things get worse for Putin after that? Right now, things are more or less holding together. Putin is trying to persuade Trump to continue the dialogue remotely. Sometimes it's Istanbul, sometimes it's the Arab countries. And in the meantime, Putin continues to destroy the Ukrainian people. This is the situation that suits Putin. But now Vladimir Putin might genuinely begin to think, should I truly take this significant risk? You see, I am already in this very instance directly quoting what could very well be Putin's own deeply considered thoughts. Am I not truly taking a significant risk by sitting down at the negotiating table with President Trump, even if it's on his home turf in the vast expanse of Alaska? Am I not indeed risking my own entire future instantly if I insist on my unwavering vision of completely occupying all of Ukraine, since I genuinely have no other ultimate goal? That is, in fact, my sole and exclusive objective. And suddenly Trump might lose his temper and really break off all my relations and use all his levers of influence. Of course, such a thought could cross Putin's mind. And then Putin might back out, coming up with a million reasons to postpone the meeting or his trip. That kind of scenario is also possible. That is precisely why I would really like to take this opportunity, once again addressing our valued viewers, to earnestly ask each and every one of you not to despair at all. There's nothing terrible yet about Trump meeting with Putin, even if it's without Zelensky. Let's say we can endure that as well. The most profoundly important thing to consider is if Donald Trump is truly telling the absolute truth, that he will definitively make up his mind in precisely 2 minutes, a clear yes or a decisive no. Then and only then do we have a genuine chance to truly hope that our formidable Fantomas will indeed go completely wild, not merely stomping his powerful feet and forcefully banging his mighty fist on the table, but also generously giving Ukraine an unlimited supply of essential weapons and crucial support. By the way, today at the press conference, he repeated that he is supplying weapons at the request of Europe, which is paying. He repeated this twice today, so he is not canceling this. This remains in effect. Our only real hope today, first and foremost, is that this particular meeting doesn't even take place at all. I truly wouldn't want it to happen under any circumstances. I'm telling you this as an American, as a citizen of the United States, because it's offensive to me, a taxpayer who voted for Trump, a member of the Republican Party, to have to tolerate a criminal on my soil, a person who belongs only in the defendant's chair, facing the highest possible punishment. For the president we voted for to receive him on my soil is disgusting, humiliating, and, in my opinion, criminal.
Boris Yakovlevich, there's a new insider report. The meeting between Putin and Trump might take place at the Alyeska Resort Hotel in the resort town of Girdwood, according to American media. It's impossible to book a room for August 14th and 15th. Moreover, the price per night, if not on those dates, is over $1,000. In Alaska, the U.S. Secret Service, responsible for the president's security, rented a 6-room house in Anchorage ahead of the Trump-Putin meeting. Realtor Larry Disbrow said that yesterday agents from the service contacted him with a request to rent a house that met the requirements they described. What do you think? So, if I understand correctly, is this the kind of luxury 7-star hotel in Alaska where Putin and Trump will be meeting?
Well, that came up. I read about it. It's true. But, you know, guys, I'll tell you once again, the very fact that Alaska was chosen, it's very, I would never have done that, if only because not so long ago, even the same courtier Medvedev was saying that Alaska is Russian, that it could still be taken back. Well, of course, those are just empty words. And yet, I wouldn't give these sycophants any reason to bring up Alaska, which was sold in 1867 by a destitute, bankrupt Russia that was in desperate need of dollars. And I wouldn't give any reason at all. In fact, I would never have held this on American territory, never. I'm not even talking about the fact that there was no need to meet with him at all. But since it happened this way, therefore, in my opinion, the location on Alaska's territory itself is not that important. Today, we're all focused on the substance. What they will talk about and what they will leave with, that's the most important thing. And I still haven't lost hope that it won't be Trump, but rather Putin who changes his mind about meeting. Because as I previously mentioned just a few moments ago, a tremendous amount is truly at stake. Right here today in this crucial dialogue, a very significant deal is undeniably on the line. And Donald Trump finds himself completely cornered, much like Vladimir Putin, by the way, is also in a similar predicament. Trump, in fact, deliberately put himself into that rather difficult and precarious corner, and now he's desperately trying to find a way to extricate himself from it, seeking an escape from his self-imposed bind. How he can do it, I don't know, by what means. There is only one way out: to give Ukraine everything it asks for in order to win. This is very important. And there is no other option for Putin. For Trump, there is no other alternative. And so today, he made a statement. If within the first 2 minutes he sees that Putin has no intention of making any concessions, he will simply get up and leave. This is what we are counting on, with all the resulting consequences.
There are two very important topics I want to discuss with you. The first topic is that Europe has admitted, European leaders, that they have no idea what Witkoff discussed with Putin and what Putin promised to Witkoff and Trump. Why did Trump even agree to this meeting? In other words, Europe and European leaders, the NATO Secretary General, they made a statement saying, we feel like a blank space in this proposal, because right now Putin has split the North Atlantic Alliance and has started communicating directly with the United States of America. And Trump still hasn't informed European leaders, NATO members, what Putin promised Trump through Witkoff, what kind of, let's say, deal or benefit he offered. So why did Trump, suddenly disregarding everything, not impose sanctions and decide to meet with the Russian dictator and terrorist #1 in Alaska?
Look at what happened yesterday. A bombshell. This is yet another bombshell published by one of Trump's favorite newspapers, the New York Post. Yesterday, it was the New York Post that once again tore Witkoff apart, exposing his incompetence, his lack of understanding of history, his ignorance of traditions, and his failure to grasp the true nature of the KGB man Putin. Who is he really? It is this newspaper that presents arguments showing that Witkoff absolutely did not understand what Putin is proposing or what he is claiming. Did he mix everything up completely, or did he do it on purpose? It's quite possible for one reason. He might have deliberately said things, conveyed to Trump what Putin never said, with the sole purpose of making sure that Friday's meeting would take place. Why is this considered bribery? I don't rule it out. That's my personal opinion. I do not rule out the possibility that this very individual Witkoff simply fell for some enticing sweeteners that were offered by Putin. And I do not rule out the possibility that something quite similar was also given to Trump. He might have received something as well. That's what Witkoff promised. He keeps repeating the same nonsense he used to say about Ukraine, like, well, Ukraine is finished. How can you even compare Ukraine to boundless Russia with its vast reserves of rare earth metals, oil, gas, and so on and so forth, which we've discussed many times before? That is precisely why the prominent newspaper extensively writes that when their dedicated journalists diligently contacted Mr. Witkoff, he once again emphatically stated the exact and complete opposite of what President Trump is currently saying and asserting. In other words, Witkoff did everything possible to make sure the meeting would take place on Friday after all. So Trump says one thing, Witkoff says another. We're talking about the borders of the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. Look, it's as if the entire discussion was actually and truly about freezing the very front line that is currently dividing the significant Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. But in reality, it turns out that Russian President Vladimir Putin is now demanding control over all 4 of these Ukrainian regions: the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, the Luhansk People's Republic, the southern region of Kherson, and the southeastern region of Zaporizhia, insisting on their full geographic borders. Can you imagine including the capitals of these regions? Just look at that. And it turns out that Putin is even laying claim to territories he hasn't occupied yet. That's the most interesting part. Do you see how it is? And the question is, what role does this guy play? This Witkoff guy. He's working for Russia. He's not working for America at all. All his praise for Putin, all his attempts to create the appearance of negotiations like Istanbul, the Arab countries, and now even the meeting between Trump and Putin, all of this is the handiwork of this Witkoff, who is simply pulling the wool over Trump's eyes. And that's really something. I've emphasized this more than once. You can go back to the New York Post website. Just type in the name Vitkov and all the articles about him will be displayed right in front of you. So yesterday there was another article, an amazing article that completely tears him apart as a diplomat, as a peacemaker, and frankly, as a real idiot. Is he useful or is he bought? It's a matter of time. Sooner or later we'll find out. Either way, it's criminal. Either way, it's punishable. We'll find that out very soon. That's why I still hope that the pressure being put on Trump will work. No one will accept Trump's concessions of Ukrainian land, which doesn't belong to Trump or America or anyone else, only to the Ukrainian people. And we must constantly remind Trump of this, which, by the way, we do every hour at the first opportunity. No discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine. That's one. Second, there should be absolutely no ceasefire whatsoever unless it is firmly and unequivocally based upon true justice. And true justice, in this crucial context, profoundly means adherence to internationally recognized borders. First and foremost, those established by the Ukrainian constitution. Secondly, and what is clearly and explicitly enshrined by our esteemed Congress. Thirdly, as a fundamental principle. That's it. These are the three reasons why no one has the right to dispose of Ukrainian land. That's how it should be.
Another sensation that blew up the internet today is Ukrainian society, European society. What happened? At a press conference, Trump stated twice that he is going to Russia. Journalists took note of this. At the beginning, the president said, and I quote, I'm going to meet with Putin on Friday. I'm going to Russia. A little later, he made a similar statement. We're going to Russia. It's going to be a big event. And now, a very important point. When Ushakov confirmed the meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska, he said that the next meeting would definitely be in Russia. So it turns out that most likely Donald Trump simply revealed that most likely right after meeting with Putin in Alaska, the next meeting will be Trump flying to the Kremlin. Boris Yakovlevich, how realistic is this, and what kind of threat does it pose when the president of the free world, the leader of the free world, a NATO member, America, the frontman of the North Atlantic Alliance, flies to the Kremlin simply to the #1 terrorist country?
Well, to be honest, it's hard to believe. Is something like this even truly possible? Even if, let's consider the absolute ideal case, even if Ukraine were to accept Vladimir Putin's terms through Donald Trump's mediation, a complete and lasting ceasefire. Even if. But as of today, this is absolutely impossible. I don't believe for a second that Ukraine will ever come to an agreement with this criminal. That will never happen. The issue of the war in Ukraine can only be resolved by force, only by driving these barbarians back to the 1991 borders. Period. Only then will a real ceasefire begin. So that's how it is. Even if, I repeat, suddenly this Friday, in the ideal scenario, Putin accepts all of Trump's conditions, a freeze, stopping the shooting, and then starting negotiations, even if that happens, and it won't, remember that, that's not why Putin is going there. Absolutely not. So even after that, there were already voices saying that Trump's second meeting with Putin would take place on Russian soil in Moscow, supposedly. Even if, after a favorable outcome of the meeting for Trump on Friday, another meeting on Russian soil in Moscow appears on the horizon, no reasonable person, especially here in America, and especially those who support Ukraine, will see this in a positive light. You are absolutely right. How is that even possible? Today, all of Russia is a criminal, absolutely all of it. Russia bears collective responsibility for all of Putin's actions. No matter how much Russian opposition figures and others criticize me for this, I don't care about that. Today, all Russians are responsible for what Putin is doing. They are responsible for sending their children to the army to kill Ukrainians. They are responsible for their silence, for not taking to the streets in protest. And I don't care. Oh, Boris, you don't know. You're sitting far away. Try it yourself. He's a dictator. He'll throw you in jail and so on. Listen, my friends, what are you trying to say? That we, from across the ocean, should solve your internal problems? Never. The rescue of drowning people is, first and foremost, the work of the drowning themselves. If you do not take the necessary steps to protect yourselves and actively engage in the crucial process of eliminating those oppressive dictators who unfortunately ascended to power thanks to your previous actions or even inaction, then it is absolutely certain that no one else will come to your aid or offer any form of assistance whatsoever. The clearest example is Great Ukraine. It was Ukraine itself with its Maidan that threw Yanukovych out. It was Ukraine itself, the people who took to the streets and decided their own fate. And that's why Ukraine is holding on and fighting for its future. This is the most vivid example. So returning to your question, there should be no talk whatsoever of Trump visiting Moscow. That would be outrageous. It would already be a slap in the face to America itself, with Trump himself involved. It's unacceptable. No one will forgive him for this. And it won't happen. This will not take place, no matter how much Putin's Goebbels-like propaganda tries to spread it. It won't happen. Let's wait until Friday and see what happens in the first 2 minutes as Trump promised today. Will he turn around and leave? And as he himself stated, the very first thing he will do is indeed call President Zelensky, inform him how the meeting truly went, and then provide the appropriate instructions. Those were Trump's words. Let's hope for that. I'm still optimistic because our people are rising up. Honestly, today's press conference was simply amazing. It was supposed to be dedicated to internal issues of Washington, our capital. But everything turned upside down. The discussion was only about Ukraine and the meeting between Trump and Putin.
You also have another insider tip that Keith Kellogg's aides were in Kyiv, but they were urgently recalled. Please tell us more about that. This is very important.
Yes. According to available information, Keith Kellogg was supposed to come this week. But before coming himself, he usually sends his aides. And these aides, having already arrived in Kyiv this morning, were unexpectedly recalled. They are already on their way back, and we don't know why. What caused this? Let's wait and see. I'm watching closely, talking to friends there. We'll see what caused this. I think most likely Trump has come up with something very interesting under pressure, specifically from Congress and especially from Europe. Europe, as you know, is in an uproar today. The Europeans are simply extremely outraged, of course. Although diplomatically they are trying to justify what is being done. The most vivid example is the reaction of NATO Secretary General Rutte, who publicly approved this meeting, but with all sorts of reservations. But behind these comments, lies a great deal of dissatisfaction. Well, we understand European leaders are trying to adapt to Trump's character just as Zelensky did, in fact. Credit where credit is due. And right now, I really hope that Zelensky doesn't repeat the same mistake that happened on February 28th when relations collapsed. So far, Zelensky is saying all the right things, very correctly defending his position, referring to the Constitution, and so on. This is the level at which things should be handled. And it's important not to go too far, not to provoke, not to give Trump any reason to latch on to Zelensky and so on. So far, Trump hasn't touched Zelensky. The focus is still only on Putin. That's why I'm coming back to today's remarkable situation that arose with Kellogg's visit and the recall of his representative. I want to say that in the next 24 hours, there will be some news. We will definitely find out what caused this and what changes are happening in Trump's foreign policy. To be honest with you, all of this shows that Trump has no strategy. Unfortunately, he is guided by a policy of, let's start fighting and we'll see what happens next. This is a terrible policy, unwise, short-sighted, and destructive. It damages America's image. That's the scariest part. And the fault lies in one thing. Trump has no sense of values. All he thinks about is money and business. That's what's ruining him. This strikes at the very foundation of our country, where moral and human values have always been above all else. This is what Trump is guilty of today, gravely guilty. This is unacceptable. It shows in everything. Even in his press conference today, he kept talking about how we spent 350 billion, while Europe spent 100 billion. Again, he repeated the same foolish talk he said 1,000 times before. Again, it's all about money, money, and more money. That's what's bad. In my opinion, it's in his blood. That's the scariest part. And until the United States Congress and we, the discerning voters, can effectively get through to him that, yes, there are certain well-defined limits within which you can appropriately talk about business, but there are also profound things that simply cannot be measured in mere money. That's human life. That's what we're seeing today on the long-suffering Ukrainian land, sacrificing its incredible generation for the sake of our own values. This is what we're trying to get across to Trump every day.
To wrap up, here's what I want to ask you. Today, Trump made an unfounded statement. I'm going to tell Putin to stop this war. And how many times have you told him on the phone to stop this war? Did he stop it? And what will you do to Putin if he doesn't stop? And Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, made an important statement that after this meeting, there should either be hellish sanctions, a complete economic destruction of Russia so that it understands it must stop the war, or Russia ceases fire. There must be serious progress. Boris Yakovlevich, to sum up, what will Trump do to Putin besides telling him, I'll tell Putin to stop this war? And if Putin doesn't stop, then what will Trump do?
Today, Donald Trump has already, albeit very briefly, indicated that if the ongoing conversation or negotiation does not proceed in a manner that aligns with his specific expectations or desired outcomes, he would be prepared to abruptly conclude the discussion, physically remove himself from the setting, and then directly contact President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. At that point, he would instruct Zelensky with a clear and unequivocal directive stating, act. Act precisely as you deem most appropriate and fitting for the situation based on your own judgment and discretion. In other words, to be honest, today he's doing the same thing, trying to do the same with Bibi Netanyahu, for example, regarding Hamas. Just recently, Trump gave him the green light, in contrast to the Europeans, the leftists, the scoundrels who are still on the side of terrorist Palestine and not the Palestine that should exist. So today, it's the same with Trump. When journalists pressed him with questions about his meeting with Putin, he casually but clearly said it was heard loud and clear. He said that if within the first 2 minutes he realizes that it's impossible to talk and there's no progress, he'll get up, leave, call Zelensky and say, take action. That means a lot. That really means a lot. So, I'll be honest with you guys once again. Let's remember that Trump is the president of democratic America. And like we've said before, and I'll repeat again, there is the American people and a bipartisan Congress. They will never get off Trump's back until he becomes president, worthy of our country. So please don't lose faith in America. We won't let Trump become, a dictator. It won't happen. There are people, and many write, Boris, what are you talking about? What laws? Trump doesn't care about the laws. That's not true. They won't let him disregard the law. They won't. He dreams of a graceful exit of his legacy. He's obsessed. He's sick with this idea. This constant manic demand from everyone he interacts with that they declare they want to appeal to the Nobel Prize Committee, that he should be given the Nobel Prize. Just look at this insatiability, this thirst for being the one to receive awards. I wouldn't be surprised if, while still alive, he starts demanding monuments to be erected for him, squares and even cities to be named after him. This is an illness, a serious illness. So there are some upsides to this as well. That's why he wants to leave a good legacy so that he is never cursed, so that the Ukrainian people remember him kindly, remember him. And maybe if he brings this war to a victorious end by driving those scoundrels beyond the 1991 borders and destroying the Putin regime, they might even put up a monument to him. That's when Trump will go down in history. He has such a chance, and we hope that he'll achieve it.
Dear audience, please like this video. Boris Yakovlevich and I are coming to you in extreme mode right after Donald Trump's press conference, so we can discuss everything while it's still fresh. We will always make sure to discuss all the most relevant events of the week. After the meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska, if it happens, Boris Yakovlevich and I will immediately go live and discuss all the consequences, all the inside information. The well-known Republican, Trump supporter, and great friend of Ukraine, Boris Pinkus. Boris Yakovlevich, as always, thank you. See you very soon, later this week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We will win. And glory to Ukraine. Glory to the great Ukrainian soldier.
Glory to the heroes.